The Shadowlands. I'll be honest with you guys, I was not expecting to do videos on these raids so soon. I thought it was going to be a while before Blizzard made changes that would actually make these raids soloable. Because that was the case with some other raids like BFA. We had to wait a long while in between Legion and BFA for those, in terms of those raids, for the BFA raids to be soloable. Like, I had to wait a long time after I did the Legion ones before I could do the BFA ones because they just took forever to change the mechanics of those fights so that you could actually solo those raids. So I thought the case was going to be the same thing with the Shadowlands raids. No. Apparently not. Apparently they were like, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and, now that War Within is underway, let's go ahead and make these raids more solo-friendly. Which is definitely now the case. I have actually already soloed all 3 of these raids on Mythic, just to verify and prove that I actually could do it. So, I have a bit of talking to do, but before I do, I want to address something. A couple of comments I've noticed in recent videos. If you're here just to simply have some kind of guide in regards to soloing these, there's really not that much to guide you through when it comes to this. If you have a high enough geared character, which for the record, my Demon Hunter, if you guys are wanting to know, is 620. So my character is pretty well geared. I mean, you can just go in, and if you're geared enough, you can DPS these bosses down in basically like a few seconds or a minute or so. There's really not that much into learning how to solo these in terms of like, oh, I got to make sure I do these mechanics correctly. No, they've changed it where you don't have to do that. You just go in and basically DPS down. There are a couple of exceptions, but I'll explain that when we get there. But if you're not interested in hearing me like share things, whether it's stories or whether it's background info or lore in regards to these raids, then you can go somewhere else. Because I'm sure there's somebody that's made a video or two that is more in tune with your I just want to know how to kill the bosses thing. You're not going to find that here, okay? And by the way, when you say no one cares, you're not speaking for everybody. You're speaking for yourself. Because there are people that do care, that are interested. Because I've seen the comments from other people. They actually do, care and actually are interested. So you can save your nobody cares about what you have to say comments to yourself. Because you don't speak for everybody. Sorry, I just had to address that and get that off my chest, but the Shadowlands, and especially Castle Nathria. If there is something that I definitely remember about this tier, this era in the game when it was current content, this was a rough tier. I want to take you guys back to around the time when we were kind of getting ready for this expansion to come out. Now, let's also remember the background of this expansion had to basically deal with what was going on in the world, which of course was the pandemic. And a lot of Blizzard employees were having to work from home and such. So there was a lot of initial, even when they first announced it at BlizzCon, I knew that this expansion was going to have issues and problems. Of course, that was before the pandemic happened, and then it happened, and then, well, let's just say we were noticing that they were probably having issues trying to actually work on this game, considering the circumstances that were going on. Now, I'm not necessarily trying to excuse them from all the problems that this expansion had, but I do want to add that extra context. So, just to let people know in case they joined WoW late or very recently and were not aware about this. But this raid has a number of different memories for me, both pleasant and not pleasant. For one thing, this is the raid that broke up my Alliance guild, Wipes on Trash, that I was raiding with in Ny'alotha. I told you guys about that when we went through the Ny'alotha raid. Well, I was still playing with them, of course, and we were, of course, getting ready to go into this raid together. I was still on that Demon Hunter, and I actually had joined the Covenant that was here in this zone, Revendreth, and was Venthyr. Now, this Demon Hunter I actually made later in Shadowlands and had her join the Night Fae as part of our alt runs when I joined my new current guild, which is Full Murloc. And at the time when this expansion started, I was with a guild that was made by a friend that we had left another guild on another server. I think it was the Lightbringer server. And she had made her own guild, and I joined it, and we played together and chatted. She was also terminally ill, so she knew she had only a limited amount of time. We never talked about it because she just wanted to spend the rest of her limited amount of time that she had left just enjoying, doing stuff that she liked, which was, of course, playing WoW. And I remember one of my memories I remember from this expansion in particular, she had access to the beta of this expansion, and I did not. So in order for me to kind of see it, which she had not played it yet, I told her, okay, how about this? How about you stream it in Discord, and while you play through the beta, I'll watch you, and so we can just kind of chat about it together. And that's what we did. She went through the whole Maw intro thing. We went to Oribos and checked out where everything was, trying to see, that's where this such trainer is, and, all that stuff when you're checking it out for the first time. And that was one of the last memories. I also remember doing some keys with her in this expansion, but considering that I have not heard from her in months, I'm pretty sure she's gone at this point. I never got confirmation about that, but that's just my own suspicion. But that's one of those memories of her that I'll always remember, is that we got to experience the beta of this expansion together. So I mentioned how this raid basically broke up my Alliance guild. Like I said, this guild that was with Wipes on Trash, I still am. My Alliance characters, most of my Alliance characters are still with that guild. We went into this raid and we progressed to an extent. At some point, they stopped coming back. I ended up messaging our raid leader at the time. We just called him Beard. And he said he basically was not having fun with the game anymore. And he was basically done with WoW. And I passed that along to the guildmaster. And basically, they have not come back since. It essentially killed our guild on the Alliance side. And it's just one of those sad memories I have, because I enjoyed playing with those guys. The memories I have of us in Nilotha, which also carried over into this raid as well, there were some fun memories. There were some fun people in that group, in that guild, and I'm sad that I don't get to play with them anymore. That this raid, this expansion basically killed that guild. And it's one of those things where I'm really sad about that still. I see this raid, and that's all I really remember, is that this is the raid that killed my guild. And it's partly because I said this was a rough tier. There was a lot of stuff about this tier, which also involved a lot of the things they had in place with this expansion, which was extremely restrictive, as well as chore heavy. This is where a lot of Shadowlands' bad reputation really started to build up, because of how we had to choose the Covenant, and then if we wanted to swap, it was a massive problem. We had to do Torghast, which was supposed to initially be a really fun thing, and it became a chore for us to have to get the things we needed, including the legendaries we were going to be crafting down there in that place where who we eventually found out was the Primus, where he could craft those legendaries for us. And I just remember how rough this raid was, and just how grinding and cruel it kind of felt to a number of guilds, especially my Alliance one. And that's kind of the thing is this raid is a mixed bag for me, because as you can probably imagine, I have some unpleasant memories from this place when I think about it, but I also have some pleasant ones. There are some things about this raid I don't like and don't fondly remember, but there's also some things I do like and do fondly remember. It was also around this time where I actually ended up making the transition, because at that point, because my Alliance guild had broken up, I needed to find a new guild I wanted to keep playing with and keep raiding with, because now I was basically like really into raiding and I wanted to keep doing it. And that's when I had the realization about this other guild I had made contact with and was still in their server, but yet had never really reached out to them or connected to them more. And I reached out to our GM in Full Murloc, Alu. Shout out to you, Alu. I messaged her and I talked to her about my situation, about how I'd also encountered this guild back in BFA and I wanted to join. And she, of course, being the sweetheart she is, basically welcomed me into the guild with open arms. I told her that I was going to be transferring my characters to the server so I could have them all join the guild, and she was like, yeah, by all means, absolutely. That was not cheap, by the way, because the amount of characters I have, it cost me quite a bit of money. But anyways, I had basically then started raiding with Full Murloc ever since. Now, unfortunately, during these times, I was also pretty busy as well, trying to also work on getting my job at the time, while also having hours, because, of course, a number of us were trying to then get jobs or get hours so we could get back to having income, trying to come out of the pandemic, Like, it was all obviously rather easy for us to play WoW during a pandemic where we literally couldn't leave homes. But once it was over, it was like, oh, crap. Like some of us are literally like, we have to go back and like try and find new jobs so we can get back to having money and put food on the table and all that. So that obviously also conflicted with what was going on here as well. And I bring that up because there's something I want to show off, but also something I want to like point out as a reminder of well, you'll notice this. I got this last night. Yay! I got my AOTC on Ansarek. Oh man, I spent all day yesterday trying to do this in different pug groups. Our guild still hasn't pulled it off, but I wanted to try and get it done so I could be able to try and hopefully get what I need to help my guild get it done. Hopefully I could get, not mainly like a couple certain pieces that could make my character stronger so I could help my guild out, get the guild a little bit better in that regard. Does that make sense? Like, getting this done and hopefully getting what I need from it to try and help my guild get the kill, You'll also notice I have a number of other AOTCs as well. Farok, Sarkareth, Razageth, the Jailer, Sylvanas, and Nazoth. Do you notice who's missing from this list? Yeah. You guessed it. Denathrius. Unfortunately, I was not able to be a part of getting an AOTC against Denathrius, and it's something that still irks me to this day. It still bothers me that I never got my AOTC against Denathrius. He was a rough fight, and I'll try to explain why when we get there. But, yeah, it took even my guild quite a while, quite a number of weeks to get AOTC. They were able to get it, but I sadly was not able to be a part of it, mainly because at the time I was having to work my job, and so I was at work while they were getting AOTC, and I just never got to be a part of, another run where we did get it for other people. It just was, also at the time, the way that this expansion was working, it was not very easy to be able to do that compared to some other bosses later on. As you can see, that we were able to do that. Some of these I was actually part of progression, but some of these I had to literally either pug it or be part of alt runs or I guess farm runs where I was just lucky to be there for the kill just so I could be a part of it. That was mainly the case with Sylvanas. I was basically part of sort of a farm run while they were the ones who were getting the kill. I had to join a pug to help get my AOTC on the Jailer before it was too late because I just wasn't able to join my guild with at the time. Same thing with Razageth as well. It really wasn't until Sarkareth that I was able to start being a part of these, legit. Now, this is, a little bit, these ones here were kind of getting them before my guild was able to, mainly because I was trying to get what I could from these bosses to try and help my guild get the kill, like, I may have gotten these before on my own without the guild, but I was more proud of getting those AOTC kills, these are me to say, with my guild in comparison to when I got it on my own. You know, because of who I got the kills with. You know, like, I may not remember who I got this AOTC on Ansarek last night with, but I'll remember when I get it with my guild, because it means more. You know? Like, it's nice that I got it, but I want to help my guild get it. So we can also have the guild version as well. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so we're actually going to go ahead. Normally I do these on normal. Nope, I didn't mean it to sound like a pun or something like that. But regularly when we do these videos, I do these on, like, normal difficulty, just to kind of show you the basic, like ways that these fights were, mechanics-wise and such. We're actually going to go ahead and do this on heroic, partly because I have apparently never gotten a heroic kill on Denathrius in this raid. Going back to that, it's just kind of one of those painful reminders when I look at these, and not the glory ones. Hold on. Shadowlands Raid. There it is. See that? I have never gotten a heroic kill on Sire Denathrius. And it's just one of those, I look at this and it's just a painful reminder to myself that I never got my AOTC on him and I've never killed him on heroic. But that is going to change tonight. Because that is what we're doing. We're going to do this on heroic, so I can also show you how these fights were on heroic, just so you guys could get an idea of what it was like trying to progress in this raid, because, oh, it was rough. Now, at the time, I was maining my Death Knight, but I also was still trying to do these on a Demon Hunter as well. Not necessarily this one, because I made her later on, but the other one you guys have seen me do the BFA stuff on, Ilanix. That Demon Hunter was the one that I actually did progression on. So just as a little reminder, this raid, you know, when you did the storyline and the zones and such, obviously part of the thing about this, you know, the story here was, of course, finding out that Denathrius has betrayed us. He's actually working with the jailer, and that's when we, you know, we freed Renathal from Torghast. We worked with Draven, as well as the other folks here in Revendreth, to take down Denathrius, who was supposed to be on our side, like the Archon and the Winter Queen was, but no, apparently he decided to join forces with the jailer. So yeah, we're basically storming the castle to take down Sire Denathrius and stop him from aiding the jailer.
It was too easy to breach the castle doors. Our former master is daring us to venture deeper into his stronghold.
He knows time is against us at every passing moment. The jailer power grows. The flow of anima into the maw must be stopped.
Be on your guard, mortals. Denathrius has the advantage here. He will use all his guile to thwart us.
The accuser. Now, I also want to point something out, or bring it to your attention. You'll notice that Draven here has the quest to do the skip.
Small walker. Revendreth must endure. I need not.
I don't think I ever actually finished this skip quest. So what I was going to point out is that if you do this on, like, when I did this on normal, it turned out that, because I had already done it, okay, what I was going to show off was that, actually, I could probably do that really quick. I'll talk about Rendle in just a second, but hold on, there's something I actually want to go ahead and show you guys. So we're going to step out, I'm going to swap it to normal, I'll show it to you, and then I'll swap back to heroic. Actually, it's possible I may not be able to actually show this right away. I may have to actually do the first boss to show it off. So we'll have to listen to them talking a bit again here.
It was too easy to breach the castle doors. Our former master is daring us to venture deeper into his stronghold.
She does have voice acting. It's just not playing for some reason.
Be on your guard, mortals. Denathrius has the advantage here. He will use all his guile to thwart us.
Welcome to the rebellion.
Okay, so you'll notice that says your warband previously completed this quest. So I can't show this off right now unless we go kill the first boss. But basically,
We must give
because they have now made the skip quest account-wide, there will be an option after you kill the first boss where you can talk to Draven and say, I want to activate the skip. Because that's basically how the skip works. But because my character never did it, but another character did, this character can still do it because it's account-wide. That's basically the point I was trying to make. Sorry about that. Alright, so now that I've done that, we can just go ahead and run past them as they're talking here. I just wanted to show that off real quick.
It was too easy to breach the castle doors. Our former master is daring us to venture deeper into his stronghold.
Mudlump. The steward of Castle Nathria. Can I just say, I always loved the, aesthetic and such of the way Castle Nathria was set up. By the way, you'll notice that right there. That is the first boss.
His guile to thwart us.
So really quick, I want to show something off and talk about this, because it's kind of funny, a little tidbit. And you had to have, been doing this when it was current to have noticed this. Come on, Rendle, show up. There you are. So here's our buddy Rendle. So you'll notice he's a vendor you could go to that can also repair. And you'll notice there's a massive pile of gold around him. So here's a funny little story about this. If you're wondering why is there all this gold around him. I mentioned how this was a very rough raid tier. It was so... Okay, so apparently there was data that was being relayed to Blizzard letting them know that this raid tier and this raid was very rough on everyone, that we were experiencing a ton of wipes. So what was happening is we were getting, I think the release spot was right here. So everyone was then running to Rendle because we could just go to him.
Died to see the realms you've seen.
And we could just repair. So what Blizzard was noticing was that everybody was having to go to Rendle and repair a lot more than usual. So to joke about this, that we were having to wipe and repair a whole lot more than we probably wanted to, they decided to put piles of gold around here to represent the amount of money that we, the players, were giving Rendle to repair our gear. And so every time I would look at this, I would just be like, wow, Rendle is making so much money off of us because we are wiping these bosses a lot. I want to stress that that was not there. The pile of gold was not there when this raid opened. That was added in like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards when they saw how much people were wiping. And now you'll notice these statues here. Hello, Mudlump. Master, intruders have arrived! Hello, Denathrius.
Welcome! I have so been looking forward to your arrival. Let's see, who have we here? Our wayward prince, of course. The deposed accuser, ever so earnest. And our mutinous former general. Along with a contingent of mortal rabble eager to meet their end.
We tire of your preening, Denathrius. Come and face us!
I seem to recall a similar bluster from you not so long ago, Renethal. And we both know how that ended. It seems you failed to learn your lesson. Perhaps I was too lenient. I am, after all, known for my compassionate nature. Let us begin your atonement with a suitable challenge, shall we?
I can't attack that target. I need to get closer.
So let me just say, I love the voice actor for Denathrius. I remember just loving the way that this guy was playing the character, because he just sounded like he was just having fun, being quite over the top with his performance as Denathrius, and I was loving it, honestly. It's one of those things I mentioned, how there are some things about this raid I like and don't like. One of the things I love is the voice actor Denathrius, excuse me. I think he's great. So, this is our first boss, Shriekwing, basically the opening boss that everybody stomped on. Even in Mythic, people were saying, look, if you wipe to this boss, you're an embarrassment. You'll notice Shriekwing was literally hanging from the ceiling when we first entered. Tasked with guarding Castle Nathria's entry hall, the blind monster Shriekwing locates her victims with horrifying cries that reverberate off the chamber walls. The last sound heard by trespassers in the Grand Walk is the monster's cry as she descends upon her prey. So, I'll try and show off this fight a bit, but basically this is a fight where it involves these pillars. You're basically having to, like, hide from certain, like, things on the ground. You're trying to hide from certain things that you can't really see. Attack she does that will cause pools of blood to show on the ground. On Mythic, just a heads up in case you guys are wanting to do this on Mythic, there's a lamp right here in the middle, and apparently on Mythic you had to use this lamp just to have those things be visible to you. Otherwise, you literally could not see those attacks. So, hello, Shriekwing. So we have a few mechanics that we do here. The bite, yep, I certainly remember that.
Echolocation.
Echolocation.
Blind swipe.
So you'll notice that drops a pool in the ground. So basically, if you got that, you were trying to go over here to the side and drop the pool here on the side to make sure that it didn't spread around the entire room. So now here's what, echoing screech. So you'll notice those on the ground there. So when that happened, you're basically having to go over here and hide behind these pillars, because you'll notice those will bounce off the walls, but they'll also bounce off these pillars here. So you would go around these pillars trying to get those things to literally bounce around and not hit you. Because if those things hit you, you would just create more pools of blood on the ground. So you could literally just kind of like cause like this entire room to be covered in blood if you didn't do it right.
Sanguine Ichor.
In case you're wondering, well, what does this do? Well, it basically lets you take damage every second. So, yeah, you basically did not want to stand in these pools of blood for a long time.
Sanguine Ichor.
And you'll also notice that when that hits you, you get horrified for a few seconds. So you not only put an extra pool of blood on the ground, but you also get horrified, making it where you couldn't move for a few seconds. And you also notice you'll get these stacks, which reduce the amount of healing that you receive. So yeah, it was a bad idea to take all those. So now Shriekwing goes to the middle of the room,
Blood Shroud,
absorbs the blood from the pools, and then gets this big shield where she would just instantly kill you if you came within 12 yards of that circle around you. You see that? In fact, I'll bet even if at this level, if I were to step in there, she would just insta-kill me. But you'll notice all these things right here, right? So if I were standing over here to avoid getting hit by it, and all of a sudden, oh no, it hits me!
Sanguine Ichor.
Yeah.
Sanguine Ichor.
So you're also, during this part, you're having to avoid all these things while also avoiding her finding you. Because, of course, well, you didn't want to get insta-killed. And that's basically the fight. So now we'll go ahead and kill her. Basically, that was just kind of like it. Like I said, this was not really a hard fight.
The chamber is ours! But I suspect Denathrius has retreated to his sanctum.
There is a passage beyond the kennels that leads down into the castle's underpinnings. From there, we can reach the anima stores and stem the flow into the maw.
If we are to have any chance against Denathrius, we must deprive him of his most prized possessions. I know the path we must take to reach them.
I'm actually going to go ahead and put this on just in case, because I noticed it was starting to do damage when I didn't want it to. So now we move into the Hound Keeper's Alley. I remember this was one of those places where we were like, oh man, lots of trash! Especially with all these guys here, these feed haulers. Because of course you would AoE and turn them from yellow to red, and yeah. And then you would have these Nathrian trackers and Hawkeyes, along with the Kennel Overseer.
Mastercraft Gamesman Snare. Mastercraft
I'm out of
Gamesman
range.
Snare.
They would drop those traps here, and if you hit that, boom! Yeah, it would do lots of damage to the group. You didn't want to do that.
The kennels house the Master's hunting pack. He keeps the beasts starved for flesh. Put an end to the Hound Master's cruelty, so we can advance to the lower levels of the castle.
You heard that right. They starve the animals here for flesh. Basically, they were treating these animals in the same way Gordon Ramsay would. Yeah. And of course, that's just pleasant, isn't it?
The hounds!
Release the hounds!
Restore
It's
stone.
too far away.
Almost sounds like a bit like Mr. Burns there, doesn't it? Doesn't he?
Ground smash.
I need a target. I need to get closer.
I wonder what's the deal with this one here. He's evading, and I'm not sure why. This one seems to be a little bugged. Hey.
I'm out of range.
Alright, hold on. Not really sure what's going on here. Alright, so this seems to be some kind of a bug. And I don't know what exactly the issue is here, or how to fix it. Unless I just, like, try to hopefully AoE it down. There we go.
I can smell your fear! Margot, to me!
Oh man, this fight. The Huntsman Altimor. Sire Denathrius seldom engages in the hunts himself, but Altimor makes certain that the Master has the finest beast should he ever choose to indulge. Margor, Barghast, and Hecutus has been trained longer than most beasts have existed, and each is ready to deliver the huntsman's wrath to any in his domain. Oh man. I remember this was a fight that, for some of the groups I was in back then, this one took us a while, because this was a fight that was very easy to wipe to, believe it or not, if you mishandled this. And of course, each of the 3 different hounds did something. The Huntsman, he basically did this range thing, where he would pick other people to be marked for this thing called Sin Seeker, and you would basically have to direct it away from other people, or just simply stand there and let other people get out of the way, depending on how you were running the group. But each of the different hounds also brought different things here as well. Margor had this thing where he would do Vicious Lunge, and everyone would be afflicted with Vicious Wound, and I believe it would be divided evenly among players. So basically, when Margor chose somebody for a Vicious Lunge, you had to all stack up together so that the wound would not just insta-kill one person. It would be divided amongst people. Barghast was the real nasty one, because he would have these things that were shades that would basically rip a soul out, and they would start doing this cry thing that would just one of the strategies we would do, I remember, was we would have a mage do polymorph on it, and we would not touch that over there. We would try to get these bosses away from those and just leave those there and just try to focus down Barghast, because once Barghast was down, or rather there were some certain stacks I think you could have them be able to either build up or go down. And when that happened, that's when you could basically go ahead and DPS it down, from what I understand. Or from what I recall, my memory on that is a little shaky. And then Acutus had this thing where he would be walking and cause damage with every step he took. I'll try and show this off however I can, just so you guys get an idea of how these fights went.
The hunt begins. Nothing escapes my sights.
So they would share health, as you can see here. He has a buff called Huntsman's Bond, where all damage taken is also dealt to allies. So we would try to bunch them up together.
Make them bleed.
So that way we could be able to cleave them both. Oh my gosh, that actually did damage to me.
This boat has your name on it.
So there's Sinseeker. 3 shots. That's basically it. There's the Jagged Claws.
Enough boats for everyone. Margor, your death will not be as quick. Barghast, come.
Alright, so here's Barghast. So you'll get to see the shades.
I have enough boats for everyone.
So there's the Ripped Soul, which had to be healed.
Shades of
Their
Barghast.
souls.
And then there's the Shades. So they would do Deathly Roar, which would, do massive raid-wide damage. And basically, that's why we had to have the polymorphs on these things. Because otherwise, if they got those casts off, it was a wipe. There was just no way around it.
I have enough boats.
Devour soul.
You killed my favorite. Acutus, here, now.
Alright, so here's Acutus.
I have enough boats for everyone.
So you'll notice Acutus also has Crushing Stone. Physical damage done is increased, and it would keep stacking the longer this went on.
Howl.
There's the Petrifying Howl, which would put all of that on the ground. So of course he didn't want to drop that. And you'll notice, you see that? The steps he's taking, and then it goes down. So if you kept him still, it would just keep stacking. But once he started walking, that's when they would start going back down. So you had to kind of manage the stacks of Crushing Stone. And that's basically the fight. You can see probably why this was an issue, because making sure, because if we polymorphed those shades, or rather those echoes,
Nothing escapes my sight.
yeah, the shades of Barghast, and someone accidentally broke the polymorph, and they got the cast off before we could like stun them, it was a wipe. Yeah.
A fitting end to that wretch.
The passage is down here, mortals.
The way ahead will be fraught with danger, but we must reach those anima stores.
Sewer rats. And then here's my favorite part. Rats of unusual size. The ROUSs. I hope there are those of you watching who have also watched The Princess Bride. Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist. Oh wait, here they are. So yeah, this was a nasty place to fight if we aggro them, which we always did, because when they would explode, they would do like a bunch of like acid on the ground. And it would also stack, and you basically couldn't get rid of it. So I'm going to avoid fighting those because I'd rather not go ahead and die right now.
A devourer. Here. The largest of its kind I have seen.
The beast seeks to sate its endless hunger upon the stores of anima below. Dispatch this creature before it grows even stronger.
You'll notice some of the models for some of these things are kind of familiar, aren't they? The mites look very much like what we've been seeing in Kahet, aren't they? Now, the Hungering Destroyer. The Devourers consume anima wherever they can find it, with drought afflicting the Shadowlands. It is no surprise that the hungriest and most dangerous of the Devourers is drawn to the abundant store of anima here in the depths of Castle Nathria. This was, this fight honestly didn't feel as much of a pain as much as the previous fight did in regards to, like, making sure we didn't mismanage certain things. There were certain things about this fight I remember in terms of, like, you had to stand in certain spots. In terms of managing also what was basically... This was the main thing. Glutinous miasma. Hungering energy surround the target, reducing all healing received by 100% and inflicting damage. In addition, the target will leech health from all allies within 5 yards every second. So you basically couldn't get healing, and in order to get health, you had to basically leech it from your teammates. So basically, we were trying to be like, okay, if you get this, you then have to stand here and, like, stand with this other player, and yeah, there was a lot of that in regards, you know, to how this fight basically worked. Try and show off some of the mechanics here. I do remember actually trying to tank this fight.
Volatile injection.
You would then also have this beam on you and try to make sure it didn't go into the raid. Melee attacks leech health, so yeah, he's actually leeching health. He also does that AoE, Desolate. He also has this, Growing Hunger. Damage of Hungering Strikes is increased. And it stacks with each consecutive melee attack against the same target. So yeah, it just is going to keep stacking because he's only hitting me. This is why you had to have the tank swap as well. The tanks had to be aware of how many stacks they were having with this, so they could make sure they didn't take a whole bunch of damage from the melee attacks. Like, okay, he's got 24 stacks, like, swap. Taunt swap.
Desolate.
And then I think Consume is the big one where we had to, like, run away from him. I'll show it off in a second here. You see the miasma around me? And then you have these orbs as well. Yeah. Those would do quite a bit of damage, so you had to make sure, like, you put them in that, you didn't run into them. Like, put them in the sides and corners and such.
Consume.
Alright, so there's the big Consume. So we all had to run over to this side while he did this. So he pulls player towards its location and leeches health from all players. The farther from the destroyer, the less leeches is leeched. Yeah. And that's basically the fight. It's not that complicated of a fight in terms of mechanics, but it could still be rather nasty. Especially with him constantly leeching health.
Done, mortals! The anima stores lie ahead!
You'll also see that the new Warbound being able to collect appearances thing is in full swing here. I actually don't remember liking or even having this trinket because I think it wasn't that great for me. Speaking of all the anima stores, you can see massive amounts of anima that have been getting siphoned, so they could send it all down to the maw so that the jailer can take advantage of them. You also know some workers here that are literally crazed with anima.
It's too far away.
You'll notice little emblems on all 4 of them here. They each have different things here, which would each play a role in the upcoming fight. Basically, these ads here help demonstrate certain parts of the fight in terms of their mechanics to let us know what we're going to be dealing with.
Something first.
You managed to escape my grasp, only to brazenly return to these halls alongside this ragged band of mortals. Pathetic!
Denathrius has betrayed Revendreth by unleashing this anima into the maw. Surely even a sycophant like you can see that.
What I see is a bold new future about to unfold. A future with no place for traitors like you!
So that's why the Accuser is not going to be able to help us in this upcoming fight. I do like her appearance here. I think like her armor and her weapons do look kind of cool. But yeah, look at all the anima here. And look at it all just getting like sent down into the maw. Yeah. Anima fuels the Shadowlands, and Lady Inerva Darkvein seeks to unlock its mysteries. Under Denathrius' tutelage, she has learned insidious secrets to turn against his enemies. She will strip anima from Nathria's invaders and use it to shape a dark new future. These containers are a massive part of this fight. As you can see, they are placed around that gradually gather anima energy to empower each of her abilities. Players can interact with the containers to open them and close them by interacting with them again. Open containers will vent their loose anima into the play space, which do damage to all players. When a container reaches full capacity, a breach occurs, which does a whole lot more. The breach continues to damage players until the anima level is reduced below capacity. So we had to manage the level of each of the different containers, and as you can see, each one did something different. So the one of Desire does the Expose Desire's ability that she does, where she will inflict a whole lot of physical damage. The Bottle Anima one would have her hurl vials of bottled anima on the ground over here. This is the one with the beams. Yeah, so there would be a couple ones that we had to stand, like, and connect the beams in order to make them, like, stop, like, doing damage to us, or we had to do it in a specific way. As you can see, this was the one that had these conjured manifestations and such. As you can see, this fight was, if we mismanaged the containers, it was a wipe. And it was like, yep, we had to manage these things correctly or else.
I will rend your souls!
So you'll see here, we have little things here showing the level of each of the containers.
I will crush your heart!
So that's that container there. So here are the bottles. So somebody had to stand here and soak that. If you didn't, big damage to the raid group.
I will enjoy wrenching the sin from you.
So those are the 3 that we had to stand there and basically soak them and connect the beams.
Sin consumes your heart! Sin consumes your heart!
Concentrated anima.
Alright, so here's where the big ad shows up.
Bottled anima.
Destruction reigns!
So that's the Spectre. And let's see if it's actually going to do a whole bunch of damage to me when it gets to full capacity here. Because you'll notice that is absolutely the one that's getting, like, the most. And you can actually see it over there. Like, you can visually see it just growing until it's, like, full.
Bottled anima.
Destruction reigns!
Focus enemy.
And you can see
Surges.
that's what would cause the wipe right there. The big, massive amount of damage that's going out to the entire platform in the raid. And that's basically the fight. Us having to manage the VAD. She empowers one. That's going to be the next one that grows and gets full. And that just keeps doing that, you'll see, until we actually empty it out.
There is no time for regrets. The reign of Denathrius must be ended.
I'm gonna have a lot of these beads to send out to alts and be like, hey, go collect Mog appearances. This is how you could get weapons back then, because some weapons were a little hard to get, so basically you had to get these beads so that you could be able to either get a weapon or a shield or offhand. And then hope that they, like, fell for those, basically instead of tier tokens.
Here, mortals. I know a passage that leads back to the antechamber.
I was never involved in managing the vials because I was playing a melee DPS. Usually that would be tasked to a ranged DPS player or a healer, since they would be in better position to do that.
Stoneborn were permitted to use such routes to see to our master's demands. The debaucheries I have witnessed.
So usually what one of my jobs was to basically be there and help out with not only the boss, but also with catching the vials, as well as dealing with the ads.
When you get 8, them fancy shoes of yours in mine.
So that's one of the wings of this raid. Now we head to the other one, the one with the more, well, let's just say there are a few fights in here on this side that are a bit more... Well, let's just say I remember some of them giving our groups a bit more of a fit. A bit more of an issue.
I need a target. It's too far away.
Huh. So I remember on normal, there was someone over here, and he'd be like, hey, you want to play a little trick on Sludgefist? But apparently he's not here on Heroic or Mythic. Because I only saw him on normal, but he's not here for Heroic or Mythic. That's interesting. And I remember us having to lust in this room here because, well, as you can see, there's quite a few ads in here, and some of them hit really nasty and hard back then. By the way, those assassins would love to show up if you were just, like, by yourself and not, like, standing with the raid group. They would love to show up behind isolated players and just insta-kill you. Or not insta-kill you, but, like, do a lot of damage to you.
It's too far away. I need to target something first.
You'll even see some court assassins are kind of showing up here. In fact, hold on. Can I see them as a demon hunter? I can! I remember being able to do this, and I was like, man, I hate it when they nerfed this. This is a really cool ability, and yet they basically nerfed it completely. Where now it basically feels like there's like no actual legit reason to actually bother using that ability. When it's such a cool ability. Now this right here, this site here, I was looking at this and I was like, wow. This is cool. All these, like, citizens of Revendreth, these aristocrats of Revendreth, dancing the night away in the ceiling, like, just high in the air. I was like, okay, this is really cool. And I remember when I was raiding with our Alliance Guild, Beard said, can we take a moment to just, like, look and admire and appreciate, like, what Blizzard did in terms of, like, the art and such in this raid? Because look at this. And he was just really marveled by this and impressed by it.
Starve outside the castle walls, yet these loyalists indulge their avarice.
As they dance and feast, the jailer amasses an army to destroy the Shadowlands. The fools deserve their fate for believing the lies of Denathrius.
Many valuable weapons adorn these halls. Let us liberate them from the grasp of these aristocrats.
I could go either direction, but you know what? I'm going to go this one, because I definitely remember this fight. Oh, this upcoming fight. I remember it quite well. So we had encountered a new type of group in Shadowlands called the Brokers.
I need to get closer.
Well, here is our first actual broker boss.
It's too far away.
Interesting. Fighting has drawn the guards away. Sire Denathrius' private collection, gathered over eons from across the Shadowlands. Yet how do I test their authenticity?
How indeed.
These brokers are a greedy lot. Do not let such potent weapons fall into their hands.
Artificer Xy'mox. Not everyone in Castle Nathria is loyal to Sire Denathrius. Some simply saw an opportunity and exploited it to their own ends. Artificer Xy'mox has worked with Denathrius, but is mostly concerned with getting the better end of the deal, which may require the end of Nathria's invaders. Boy. I remember this fight so well because of the amount of, like, having to manage the wormholes for teleportation on this platform for this fight that we had to do, as well as some traps. So on Heroic, there were these things called stasis traps, where people could get stunned and suffer damage until it was destroyed. Now, there were a couple ways you could deal with this. At the time, I was on my Death Knight, and what I discovered was that there were a couple ways Death Knights could deal with this. One, we had Icebound Fortitude to break us out of the stun. Two, you could use Anti-Magic Shell and use those to break them. So at the time, I was using a legendary that basically increased the duration of my Anti-Magic Shell to about 24 seconds. In fact, I think I can actually show it to you guys. Let's see, which one was it? Trying to remember which one it actually was. Oh, here it is. Death's Embrace. Increases the duration of Anti-Magic Shell by 140%, and any damage it absorbs heals you. This basically made the duration of this up to about 24 seconds. So I could pop Anti-Magic Shell and run through them to help clear the traps for my group. And that's basically one of the things I was doing. Now, later, our raid leader in Full Murloc Fury, may he rest in peace, we sadly lost him some time ago. He later on messaged me saying, okay, look, I know what you're doing to help out the group, and I appreciate your effort to do that, but at the same time, I need you to get a legendary that can help you do more damage, because while I appreciate you doing things to help us out with mechanics, I also need you to help out contribute more damage. So that's when I had to work on getting another legendary that was supposed to be like help me out to do more damage as a DK at the time. So, but I do remember at the time really liking the fact that I could have my AMS just go on for a long time. But this fight also had a few other things. You'll notice these things around the room. These are things that Xy'mox is going to be using during this fight against us. He's going to put that in the middle of the room. It's going to suck us into the middle, and basically if it hit us, we would basically get killed. He had this other thing that would create phantasms that if they caught us, they would mind control us. Yeah. And he would also put this thing where we had to grab seeds and put them in certain spots because the blast radius of the seeds were massive for the platform. So we had to put it like in this corner, and it would go like up to around here. So what we had to do is we had to put those wormholes like here and over there. So when people dropped the seeds, they could immediately take the wormhole back to that side so they could avoid getting destroyed by the seed. I'll try and see if I can show all this off these mechanics if I possibly can. I don't know if I actually can in a solo effort, but I'll see what I can do.
I'm out of range.
Wonderful! I have been hoping to test these relics on live targets.
Hyper Light Spark. Stasis Trap.
So there's the trap. And here's one of the dimensional tears.
Mind your step!
So yeah, those blasts would hurt.
This relic are true!
So there's one tear.
Fleeting Spirits.
So there's one of those relics.
Hyper Light Spark.
Which is what would put out the phantasm. Which is why he was like, you cannot bargain with death. Now, the mechanics would actually progress based on his health.
Dimensional Tier. Hyper Light Spark.
Mind your step! The anticipation to use this relic is killing me! Though it will more likely kill you.
Hyper Light
So yeah, 70% is when he then triggered the next relic or artifact that he would use in this fight.
Dimensional Tier.
Mind your step!
Seeds of Extinction.
There they are.
You cannot.
So those are the seeds. So I basically had to grab this and put this over here in this corner and then use the tear to go away. Because look at the blast radius of these seeds. Yeah. So we had to put all of them in a corner and then use the tear to get to the other side of the room. Otherwise, it would basically wipe us.
Hyper Light Spark.
The warp beckons.
Dimensional Tier.
Destruction is guaranteed. Mind your step.
I think 40% is when the next relic would happen.
Light Spark. Seeds of Extinction. Stasis Trap. Hyper Light Spark.
I hope this wondrous item is as lethal as it looks.
Hyper Light Spark. Stasis Trap.
So now this is when we would get the Annihilate mechanic, which is the big thing right there, which is going to drop in the middle of the room and would suck us in. I'll try and show it off. So there it is.
Annihilate.
And this is where we would again use these tears to try and see if we can avoid getting sucked in and... So yeah, it would basically kill you. And that's basically the fight.
Mind your step! This exchange has no further value. Consider our business concluded. For now.
truly one of the most malignant of all sins.
You'll notice he took those relics with him because of course he did. Oh, don't worry, we'll see Xy'mox later. That is not the last that we shall see of Artificer Xy'mox. So rather than go downstairs, we're going to go to the other side now. Now, I think sometimes we would actually go to the other side first because there was another mirror for us to open up to get around the castle better. Which is supposed to be, like, right over there.
I need to
But, of course, we couldn't get access to some of those until we cleared the rooms, and then Renethal would be like, alright, let me open the path.
This mirror should prove useful for helping you move throughout the castle, mortals.
And Renethal is, of course, anything but helpful. So in case we would wipe on Xy'mox, or the next fight, we would just use that mirror and go back to this place over here, so we could try those bosses again. Now the next fight is a little tricky, but at least it was on Mythic, but for the most part they've actually made it where if you're on a character that can't heal, you'll be fine. Which is something they never did on some other bosses back in the day. Like, you guys remember the green dragon from Icecrown Citadel, right? You basically can't do that fight unless you have a way to heal it. Well, this next fight requires healing. Well, fortunately, they have done something to make it where you can actually do this fight without the need to do that, because it will actually just heal itself, which I think is a really nice thing for them to do. Now, it's a little odd the way it's working on Mythic right now, but there is kind of a way to do it. You just have to kind of give it a few tries before you figure out how it works. So, is this a familiar face and name?
Once I break these bonds, you will be the first to burn!
Wrath is your most potent sin, Sunstrider. It will serve us well.
This one's pride and arrogance are legendary. Come, let us deprive Denathrius of his prize.
Sun King's Salvation. In the sinister confines of Castle Nathria, souls are being tortured not to redeem their sins, but to amplify them. The prideful Prince Kael'thas has been burdened with the sins of others, and his pain and hatred are channeled to make him a powerful weapon. This has imperiled his soul like no other, and it must be saved, if only to keep it from being unleashed upon the Shadowlands. So forgive me if I start to go into a bit of a, I don't think I'm going to go into a rant here, because I actually had that rant when we did our video on Magister's Terrace. But you'll notice that Kael'thas sounds a little different. So when this raid first came out, the legendary Quentin Flynn was brought back to voice Kael'thas. In fact, if you actually go back and listen to my videos when I did this, when it was current content, and I did this in LFR, the way he said that was different because it was Quentin Flynn voicing him again. And in my opinion, he obviously does it much better because he's a terrific voice actor. Well, then, and I talked about this in the Magister's Terrace video, what was proven to be false accusations against him came out. But Blizzard didn't care if they were proven to be false or true or not. They immediately fired him, and then they hired another voice actor to come in and redo all of his voice acting and replace it in the game. Again, this was before any of this was proven to be either true or false. They didn't care. He was accused, therefore he had to be fired and have all of his work undone and replaced by somebody else, who in my opinion is not as good as he is. I almost feel like Quentin Flynn is in the same situation as Johnny Depp, where they were treated horribly before they were shown that it was actually not true what they were accused of. And whereas Disney actually bothered to apologize to Johnny Depp and try to get him to come back and such, Blizzard has never done the same for Quentin Flynn. Again, I want to stress the accusations against Quentin Flynn were proven to be false. But they never either apologized to him or re-put all of his voice acting back in the game. It's still just this, in my opinion, subpar voice actor doing the same lines, not nearly as good as Quentin Flynn did. Alright, so anyways, now that I've had my little mini rant again about this, about the Quentin Flynn thing, let me now talk about this fight. So, this fight is rather interesting in that you'll see that Kael'thas's health is 10%. The way to win this fight is we have to get Kael'thas's health back up and defeat what is known as the Shade of Kael'thas, which manifests when he reaches 45% health and 90% health. This fight is mainly we have to deal with all the ads that are constantly going to be spawning like throughout the room and use these things right here, soul pedestals. Now, those are for the people who are not healing. The healers in this fight not only had to heal the raid, but they also had to heal Kael'thas. What the players, like myself, the DPS players, had to do was we had to go to these soul pedestals and try to channel into them to heal him up. I'll try and see if I can show this during this fight. But basically, yeah, we were having to deal with managing the different ads that would show up throughout this fight, and it could actually become a bit of a mess if you didn't manage the ads. And then if you got the Shade to show up, that could also be a very nasty portion of the fight. But I'll show one of the things that they did to make it where he now just kind of keeps healing throughout the fight.
Renethal's traitors! Gods, stop them!
Greater castigation.
Sunstrider belongs to us!
So Kael'thas has this buff on him now.
More of those fools seek to hinder us. Do not
Gift of the
allow
Sun
them
King,
to
healing
interfere.
1% of maximum health every second. So these guys would show up, but they were a bit nasty. They could actually land and interrupt your cast on the pedestals here.
All shall suffer my wrath!
So here comes the first Shade. He would show up, do that. He would spawn a reborn Phoenix, which would fixate, and put a patch of fire on the ground. He could also do this thing where he would shoot this big blast of fire at you.
Consume you!
There's the patch of fire. Burning remnants, which of course would stack.
Blazing
You
surge.
shall all be engulfed in flame!
Yep, there's the blast of fire.
No! I will not be confined again!
Additional guards are en route.
So this is what you would do. You would channel this here. And you'll notice this would stack here. Damage taken from this increases, and then you can't use it again for another 2 minutes.
Yes! My power! It returns!
So on Mythic, apparently this can be a little buggy, where all of a sudden when it gets to a certain portion, it actually stops with that right there. And I don't know why it does that.
Burns like 1,000 suns!
But yeah, you'll see there's a number of other ads here. There's Fiends, there's these Assassins. Basically, once you got to the Shade and finished it off, you basically won the fight.
Finished! Let me be free!
Kael'thas Sunstrider, you are free from the Sire's tyranny, but you cannot escape your own deeds. Come with me, and I will help you find atonement.
I am tired of being used as a pawn by others. Will your help allow me to claim vengeance?
You have so much to learn.
Take this soul away and aid him, accuser.
You would get more follow-up story stuff with him if you did the Venthyr campaign. Which I did show off in a separate playlist if you do want to check that out. But yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I'm listening to how this guy is doing the lines, and I haven't heard him do these lines, because when I last did this raid, it was still Quentin Flynn voicing Kael'thas, and man... yeah, Quentin Flynn did it so much better. He was a legendary voice actor for a reason. Now, I would not be necessarily saying these things if the accusations against him were actually proven to be true, but they were actually proven to be false.
Come, mortals. It is time to rid Revendreth of a haughty band of nobles that stand between us and Denathrius.
So he opens up this portion, and then, Renathar, are you going to go over here and open this mirror?
The passage back to the antechamber lies this way.
Yes, he is. So if we were to wipe on this upcoming fight, we could just take that mirror and just be right back here in this room.
You have done well so far, mortals, striking a blow to the efforts of Denathrius. But do not underestimate his power. His might is considerable.
So now we're on the floor level of that room we were looking up at, and you can just see look up there and just see them all dancing up there. It's just like, oh man, look at this room. Okay, I have something funny to share about this. If there's one hilarious thing about this room that I remember when it came to all this trash, is that you see these guys here, the waiters. There was something that could happen that could cause them all to become gigantic. In fact, I want to show it off. Can I show it off? I think it was right here, the snowboard.
Thank you both for attending. The ball would not be as grand without you.
Think nothing of it, darling. As long as the wine flows, you will have my attention.
I do not share your love for these frivolities. I prefer my gatherings on the battlefield.
Oh, don't be such a bore. If you behave, perhaps I will let you skewer a few of the waitstaff.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. I know some people hate this upcoming fight, but I love it. For two reasons. One, the main reason I love this fight is the voice acting. This is why I tell people, if you play this game without sound, you are missing out on some of the best parts of this game. Because to me, this fight isn't nearly as entertaining or enjoyable to do, at least for myself, without the voice acting. The voice acting for this fight, from those three up there, they are having fun with this. And I love it when voice actors are clearly having fun. And they really made this fight fun just simply because of certain lines of dialogue. I'm trying to remember whether or not this is... There it is! Dinner bell!
Simple follow.
Oh my gosh, they actually are going to kill me.
Mastercraft simple follow.
Oh man, this is funny.
Snare. Simple follow.
Gigantic waiters! Oh man.
Mastercraft gamesman simple follow. Mastercraft.
So, funny little story. When we would get wiped by these guys because that cast got off, if we were releasing too quickly, they would literally head through that mirror and follow us into the antechamber. I kid you not, these things would follow us to the antechamber as we were all releasing. It was hysterical. I loved that so much. That was like always one of the funniest highlights of the night. If we accidentally did not get the interrupt the cast for dinner bell, and all those gigantic waiters just all of a sudden killed us all. It was hilarious. Oh man, it was so funny. Every time that happened, we would laugh, and it would just be so hilarious. The Council of Blood. The Council of Blood presides over courtly functions in Revendreth. Castellan Nicholas is a strict military commander with an indomitable will and impenetrable armor. Lord Stavros, a foppish dandy, leads the court in dance, but is also deadly with his blades. Baroness Frida wields powerful anima magics and commands the Dredger waitstaff, along with the respect of the entire court. So, this was obviously a council fight, duh. So there was something in this fight called Oppressive Atmosphere, where as the fight continued going on, you would get damage continuously against the raid, and it would stack up to, like, every 10 seconds. So you basically had to make sure this fight didn't go on too long. Now, when it came to this fight, you could take these guys down in a certain order. And what order you took them down one at a time in would actually change some of the mechanics of the fight. So there ended up being like a usual recommended order in how you would want to end up killing them. So like Nicholas would usually have this thing called Duelist Riposte. He would summon attendants. And then there would be, like, if he was still alive after the first one, he would get infused with anima, which would give him Dredger servants, calling waiters to harass players. If he was the last one standing, he would have Castellan's Fury, where he would call forth stone guards to his aid. I can't recall us ever actually wanting to go ahead and do that, because usually it was, they would get the Castellan's Fury buff, and I'm pretty sure we never had him last. Now, Stavros. Stavros was basically one of the main tank mechanics, because he had Evasive Lunge, and it was always very nasty to deal with. He also had this mechanic called Dark Recital, where he would tell players to, like, find your dance partner, and if you were farther than 8 yards away from your partner, you would suffer damage. So you had to quickly get to your partner, and then move in a certain pattern to be able to make sure that you didn't do damage to other people around you. If he was if he was not the first one taken down, he would get Waltz of Blood, where he would call down people from above to come down and dance here on the floor, and if they contacted us, we would get damaged. If he was the last one standing, he would have 2 left feet. He is unimpressed by your dance moves, and while moving or jumping, your movement speed will be reduced by 2% every 0.3 seconds. Standing will allow you to regain your footing. And he calls waltzing Venthiers to the dance floor as well, which would do this big violent uproar, where they would emit violent outbursts, and it would basically wipe the raid. And I'll talk about Danse Macabre in just a moment. So then there was, of course, Frida. She was usually the one we would have be last. So usually the order, if I recall correctly, we would take out Nicholas first, and then we would have Stavros be second, and then we would have Frida be last. That was our usual order when we were progressing this. So, she pulls life energy from targets, inflicting damage. She would also do Dreadbolt Volley, which had to be constantly interrupted, because it would also stack. If she was infused, she would do Prideful Eruption, where each player would erupt, so you had to make sure that we were all standing separately and not bunched up together. When she was the last one, she would do Twisted Pain, cause them to manifest pools of pain when they took damage from her abilities, and pools, and then she would do Soul Spikes, which would summon forth spikes that impaled the current targets. Each spike would inflict damage, and it would also radiate a portion of the damage inflicted to all players. So, yeah, our usual order that we would do it was Nicholas, and then Stavros, and then Frida. I personally always wanted to get rid of Stavros because I did not like the mechanics that I hated in this fight. Hated was his Dark Recital, because it was something I died constantly to, and other people died to as well, constantly. I also didn't want to deal with his Waltz of Blood, because they would constantly just get in the way, because you couldn't really tell, I mean, you could kind of tell, but very, very briefly, where they were going to go, and you would always get hit by them, and he was frustrating to deal with. Now, when I was first hearing about this fight in the PTR, when this expansion was on its way out, the mechanic everybody talked about was the dance mechanic. Where, once you got one of them to 50%, they would say, "Alright, that's it, time for the dance macabre." They would go over here, and you would see your own personal spotlight on the floor where you had to go to, and then you had to respond to what they would do. And they had certain voice lines they would say to tell you how to dance. By the way, other people from the side would go out and dance with you. And every time you did a dance step correctly, you would get a haste buff. If you did it wrong, you would take damage. Basically, the audio cues for this fight was, they would say, "Prance forward," and you would move forward. "Sashay left," and you would move left. "Shimmy right," and you would move to the right. "Boogie down," and you would move backwards. These were very simple audio cues, and yet I cannot tell you how many people I encountered that just seemed to have issues with this mechanic. I never failed it. I rarely ever failed it, because it was very, I mean, I have it set up where it's like, okay, I move forward with W, I move backwards with S, A, D to okay, not to, no, that's a turn. If I want to move strafe to the left or right, I would just press Q or E. That's how I've got my keys bound. So I would just be doing this the whole time to do it correctly. But I guess because some people just have their movement keys bound differently, it would be an issue for them. Like, some people just never like the idea of moving backwards. They don't like doing this. They think the idea of moving backwards is a horrible thing, and you should never do that. You should always just turn around and run the other way, when that's not what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to move backwards for this fight, in this mechanic. But some people just seem to not be able to do it. I don't know. I loved this fight because during the dance mechanic, these guys would have hilarious ways of either saying those lines, or once the mechanic was over, they would say something differently. I'll try to play how each of them say it differently for your entertainment. So I'm actually going to go ahead and try to do it in the order that we used to do it, just so you guys can see it.
How dare you invade my party in such dreadful attire!
So you can see why Stavros is my favorite.
Evasive lunge.
He loved dancing, and he loved, like, parties. He's like, "Oh, how dare you show up in my party in such dreadful attire!"
Everyone, find your partners, or die!
Evasive lunge.
So that's, yeah.
Evasive lunge.
So the evasive lunge, you can see that's why I didn't like it, because then damage you take from it is increased. It was always very nasty to deal with. But yeah, he would say, "Everyone, find your partners or die." And so you would get this big thing here, and it would just keep dropping. If you didn't move, you would basically die. And that's why I always hated Stavros and wanted him to die right away, because I just couldn't stand his mechanics. It was infuriating to deal with.
Attendant.
So you can see he's summoning the attendants.
Drain essence.
Let me start draining Nicholas's health here.
Everyone, find your partners, or die!
Dance
Attention!
macabre.
Set formation for the dance macabre!
So you go this and you start dancing.
Shimmy right! Sashay left! Boogie down! Sashay left! Shimmy right! Prance forward! Stop this nonsense! You have disgraced this gathering long enough!
So I apologize. I just realized I had the music muted in-game. I apologize for that. I wanted the music to be playing for this sequence. But yeah, he says, "Stop this nonsense! You've disgraced this gathering long enough." He's not very fun when it comes to parties. Nicholas isn't. So then we would take down Nicholas.
What kind of strategy was that?
Dreadbolt volley.
So you can see that now they both get infused with anima, the one from their fallen comrade, with this now where they both get their new abilities.
Everyone, find your partners! Or die!
Evasive lunge. Evasive lunge.
Alright, soon we're about to have the Waltz of Blood.
Evasive lunge. Evasive lunge. Waltz of blood.
Everyone to the dance floor!
Evasive.
So there they are.
Evasive lunge. Prideful eruption.
And you could see kind of where they were going to then move, sort of, but not really.
Evasive lunge.
There's really not much of an indication you can see there as to where they are actually going to move. So let's say you're trying to stand here to avoid getting hit by them, and then all of a sudden they move this way, and you're like, ah, there was no way for me to know where they were going to go. So yeah, I think I've made it clear that I really dislike the mechanics of Stavros, because they were just very frustrating to deal with. So now listen to Stavros when we dance.
Take your
Drain
position!
essence.
It is time for the dance. Macabre! Boogie down! Prance forward! Shimmy right! Sashay left! Shimmy right! Prance forward! Your steps were simply delicious! Pity you have to die now.
Evasive.
I loved that. That's another reason why Stavros' voice actor was my favorite, because of the way he would say that, like, your steps were simply delicious. It's such a pity you have to die now.
Partners!
So yeah, I loved Stavros' voice actor.
But I am the life of
But I am the life of the party!
Manifest pain.
So there's the Manifest Pain.
Manifest pain. Manifest pain. Manifest pain.
So yeah, Frida was also a little
Manifest pain.
nasty to deal with. Here is the last one. Here's the big explosion we would do.
Dreadbolt volley. Soul spikes.
And then here are the Soul Spikes.
Soul spikes. Soul manifest pain. Soul spikes.
Dear
Macabre.
guests
Manifest
and
pain.
vile intruders,
Manifest
take your
pain.
places for the dance macabre. Prance forward. Shimmy right. Boogie down. Sashay left. Prance forward! Boogie down! Enough! Your gyrations sicken me!
Dreadbolt volley.
I've always loved how she said, like, oh, your gyrations just sicken me! I'm like, excuse me, I don't think I danced that badly.
Dreadbolt volley.
Always me.
No.
Watch them scatter. It sickens me how far some of my people have fallen.
I believe you're the one who's currently beneath me. So I know a lot of people hated that fight. I can't. I love that fight, and I always will, just simply because of the voice acting. It always brought a smile to my face and made me laugh. Oh, the Splintered Heart of Alar. With Leech! Oh my gosh. I wonder if this was a tank trinket. And then the macabre sheet music. Alright. So now we're back in the antechamber.
Which boss has sent you?
For the next boss. Now, I know that some people consider this to be one of the best boss fights in this raid, but I'm sorry, I have very bitter memories towards this next boss, and it's my least favorite fight in this entire raid. I hate this boss with a fiery passion, because this fight made playing as a melee DPS infuriating. Especially, regardless of what class you were, whether it was Death Knight or Demon Hunter, which is what I mainly played during this raid tier, I hated this fight so much. Sludgefist.
After all my teachings, Renethal, still you reach beyond your station. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Such disappointment.
Oh, but you taught me well enough to dispatch so many of your underlings, Master.
True, you left considerable detritus in your wake. If you're so fond of wreckage, my lumbering friend here will happily oblige.
Who making this ruckus? Nobody disturb Master.
No, see that they do not.
Sludgefist. Sludgefist. Sludgefist was born in the muddy foundation beneath Castle Nathria and now wanders the halls as he waits orders from Sire Denathrius. His massive footsteps reverberate throughout the castle, announcing his arrival from several rooms away. Oh my gosh. This fight was so infuriating to deal with as a melee DPS. Let me try and explain. Now, I know some people, like, including, like, Max from Liquid and such, have talked about how this is actually the best fight in this raid, and that might be true. Like, you know, I'm not going to necessarily deny them saying it's the best fight, like, in terms of, like, evaluating, like, how good of a designed fight they are to say this, you know, that this is a good fight. I'm not saying it's a bad fight. I'm just saying I hated it. There's a massive difference between saying that you like something and saying something is good, or saying that something is bad and saying that you hate it. There's a massive difference. Just because I love the Council of Blood fight because of the voice acting doesn't necessarily mean that I think it's a good fight. Just like how if I say I hate the Sludgefist fight, that's not me saying that I think it's a bad fight. I want to be very clear on that. This was a massive DPS check. So he had this thing called Hateful Gaze, where upon reaching 100 rage, he would focus his gaze on a target and then channel to the direction after 6 seconds. I'll talk about that in a second. The thing I hated about this fight was Chain Link. He marks 2 players, and after 6 seconds, shackles them together. The chains will inflict damage to both players every 2 seconds for 56, and moving 14 yards apart would shatter the chain. When you shattered the chain, you would take so much damage you would die, or it would stun you. Basically, if you broke the chain, you were dead. And that just made this fight infuriating to play as a melee DPS, because if the two of you moved too far apart and broke the chain, you were dead. And it was infuriating to deal with as a melee DPS. Plus, here was the other part that made that really annoying to deal with. Destructive Stomp. Because he would then do this big stomp that would do tons of damage and knock you back. So if you didn't get out of range of it, then yeah, it would also completely ruin. It would absolutely, like, kill you, because you would basically get knocked away from your partner, and it would break the chain, you would die. Yeah. So he immobilizes players with the heavy chain. This was part of the heroic part of the fight. Pulls that player and allies within 7 yards towards him, inflicting damage divided evenly between affected players. He would also have this mechanic. Now, here's something funny. This mechanic right here, Giant Fists, where he would carry his attack would carry through to the next closest player within 5 yards. If no player was found, the player would be struck twice. This was the tank mechanic. Both tanks literally had to be stacked right on top of each other so they could deal with this mechanic. This mechanic was actually bugged in Mythic in the Race to World First, so Liquid told Blizzard, we are going to wait until you fix this bug before we actually try to progress this fight, because we're not going to do this fight if this mechanic is bugged. So yeah, that literally put the race on hold for a little while. So he also has a gruesome rage, and once he got to 30% health, he would do more damage, and he would do more attack speed. He would do this big roar, which would push players away. He would have rubble fall, which could also cause a stone quake. The other part of this fight was, I mentioned, the Hateful Gaze, where he would then charge a player. So what the player had to do was get behind one of these 4 pillars in the room. You see, he would hit it, and he would then he would slam into the obstacle, which inflicted damage, but it would also stun him, and it would increase the amount of damage he would take by 100% for 12 seconds because he has a lot of health. Now, when it hit a pillar, it would do damage every second to players, and it would stack. But if he hit a wall, then it was a wipe, because then everything would fall on the players every second, and it would just kill everybody. So this is why it was a big DPS check. We had to get him to charge into these pillars. If we ran out of pillars, by the time he got to the 5th charge and he hit the wall, it was a wipe. So we had to do enough damage to him before he got to the wall, otherwise we couldn't kill him. This is why he was a massive DPS check. So yeah, this guy was infuriating to deal with. I hated this fight so much.
Colossal Roar.
Gonna flatten your bones!
Gosh, notice that because of this, he is still really hitting me hard.
Destructive Stomp.
Here's the Stomp. By the way, if that Stomp hit a pillar, it would destroy it. So you had to make sure that he was not close to the pillar when he stomped, otherwise, well, yeah. Also, here's the Chain Slam. Ow.
Colossal Roar. Destructive Stomp.
So here's the Stomp. You had to make sure it wasn't there, and that, yeah, so you would do that.
Hateful Gaze.
Stomping time!
So here's the Gaze.
Destructive Impact.
And as you can see, that's when he would get the big, like, I take more damage. So now you can have a pretty good idea as to why. Now, it's not showing the chain mechanic because, of course, I'm here by myself, but trust me when I say that chain mechanic made this fight infuriating as a melee DPS. I hated this. And it's a little cathartic for me to come back here and just annihilate him. Because screw you, Sludgefist!
Gruesome Rage. Chain
So you probably noticed that he destroyed the mirror, trying to prevent us from catching Denathrius.
Fortunately, this mirror does not seem beyond repair. Be warned. Denathrius' most loyal guardians still stand between us and our quarry.
Indeed. So, I will agree that design-wise, it's pretty well done, but gosh, I hate that fight so much. I just have so many infuriating, frustrating memories from that fight. So, if you're wondering, like, well, what did the range DPS have to do? Well, they were basically having to play over to the side of the room, being able to kind of, like, dance around the rubble that would fall. and like, you know, just kind of like work around being able to, like, if in case it got targeted, to be around the pillar. Like, honestly, it looked like as if the ranged DPS had a much nicer time. And I remember people were kind of agreeing that this tier was really hard on melee DPS players compared to ranged DPS. And now for the fight that a lot of people hate in this raid. Especially in Mythic, in the Race to World First. They hated this fight.
Taking all my strength to hold back their onslaught. Call! Grishol! Do not be blinded by misplaced loyalty! The bargain Denathrius has struck will destroy Revendreth!
You are a disgrace to our kind, Draven! If you will not serve, then you... Stoneborn! Strike down these usurpers!
So yeah, the trash here wasn't all that fun to go through. And so now we have the Stone Legion Generals. The ancient Stoneborn generals, Khal and Grishol, have hounded the Prince Renethal's rebellion at every turn. Once they were General Draven's apprentice and mentor. Now, their strength, strategy, and soldiers have been unleashed against him and any who would defy the Sire's will. So in Stage 1, we will face Khal, as Grishol flies above. And then at 50% health, she will get into an immune hardened stone form as we do another part of the fight. Khal has this mechanic basically involving swipe. You'll notice that she has a buff called can attack with both wings, bladed wingtips. Which would also have this ricocheting blade mechanic, I do remember that, which would cause a laceration, which was a bleed, which would be very nasty to deal with. There were a couple of other mechanics that you could utilize in order to try to help deal with some of these constant bleed mechanics, including things like Crystallize, which would be another mechanic that Grishol would have. There would also be this phase in between where we had to deal with ads, which would drop Anima, which we then had to bring over to Renethal in order to be able to continue the fight, and then we would get into the last phase, which would be both of them at the same time. So I'll try and show off this fight how I can.
Your rebellion ends here!
Traitors must die!
Stone Spike.
Bleed!
So you'll notice Serrated Tear is not going to go away.
No escape!
And then there's the Wicked Blade. There's the Ricochet Blade.
Crystallize.
So then we would have Crystallize. This was a way you could get rid of the bleed. Because then you would get put into a stone statue, which would stun you.
Stone Spike.
Tear you asunder!
Yeah. So there were basically ways to kind of deal around with those mechanics when it involves like other people being here, so...
Hardened stone form.
Get cover!
My blade will find you!
Champions! I will clear the skies!
Bring me their anima, heroes!
Animation there looks a little wonky, I will admit, but players were not really looking up and watching, so I think the developers were counting on that because, well, look at that. That looks a little silly, doesn't it? Like, I do like the fact that he's actually, like, you know, going up there and doing that, but at the same time, it's like, come on, that looks a little silly. Let's be clear on that.
Stone Spike.
So she actually is still taking damage from me, which is kind of hilarious.
Anima Infusion. Anima Infusion.
So you had to go ahead and get these and bring them to Renethal so he could then clear up what was going on.
Shattering
Friends,
blast.
shield yourselves!
My blade will find
You cannot escape my
Stone form.
not be broken! Tremble in my
Straven, are you alright?
I yet stand, Prince. Though I may fly a little stiff in the morning.
Crystallize.
I'm still doing Immolation Aura even while stunned.
I will drive you into the ground!
So the eruption here would then do this, which would put that in the ground, and yeah. There was also this mechanic, I think, in Mythic, where you could actually get blown off the platform. It's one of those things where a lot of people absolutely hated this in Mythic. I think people like Preach and Max were talking about how this is actually one of those fights they absolutely despised and thought it was a terrible fight.
Crystallize. Hardened
Your
stone
blades
form.
will break across
Wicked
my
flame.
skin! Champions, I will clear the skies!
I need more anima!
I will break you!
Anima infusion. Anima infusion.
So of course people had to go around and quickly get these anima orbs and try to quickly get them to Renathal so we could actually continue the fight.
Infection.
While having to survive these mechanics, you know?
Anima infusion. Crystallize. Anima infusion. Shattering blast.
you myself!
There is no stone!
I cannot be shattered!
Old friend, do you still live?
Crystallize.
Yes.
Bleed!
So yeah, you then basically had to deal with the mechanics for both of them at the same time, and yeah, that was basically...
I'm tired of your insolence!
The Stoneborn were not the only ones manipulated and deceived, my friend. I dare say even the Arbiter herself has been made a pawn. The time has come to dethrone our former master. What we do next, we do for the sake of all the Shadowlands.
Nelly deals for a friend of the Grummles, like you.
Alright. So, as you can see, Denathrius awaits us. However...
More loyalists. We must drive them back, my prince.
You are the key to victory, mortals. Go! Strike down the one who has betrayed us all!
Look, Remonia! These daring mortals have persevered through every obstacle put before them. It seems we have little choice left but to surrender.
I have a better idea, Master. Let me carve them up instead.
Now there's a thought. We could flay these petulant, small-minded creatures and use their bones to pave the path for our ascension. Oh, what to do, what to do.
Please, Master! It's been so long since I cut into living flesh! Let me skewer them, slice them, slash them, vivisect them, cut ribbons from their...
Pace yourself, Remonia. Rushing one's work is so unflattering. I shall assist our guests with their atonement. Once they have repented, I will permit you to rend their bodies and send their souls screaming into the maw.
Denathrius. For countless ages, Sire Denathrius stood among the Eternal Ones who ruled the realms of death. But in the Shadowlands' darkest tower, he has betrayed his sacred duty. With his bloodthirsty living blade Ramornia at his side and defended by his most sycophantic loyalists, Denathrius will cut a swath through any who stand against him and cast the remains into the escapable terror of the maw. Oh, man. Ugh. I remember I had lots of attempts on this, trying to get my AOTC, and I was just never able to be a part of one. I was a little busy during that time as well, trying to also work my job while also doing this, but like I said, this raid tier was rough on the player base. It caused a number of players to stop playing and quit, including one of my own guilds, you know? This fight. Stage 1 was rather interesting here, and how it took place here on this top platform, where once you pull, you get hit with something. I think it's called Burden of Sin. Yeah. All players gained 5 stacks of Burden of Sin at the start of the encounter. Every 2 seconds, Burden of Sin would inflict damage per stack. The way you got rid of these stacks was by, I think it was Cleansing Pain, where he would strike with cruelty, inflicting damage to all players in a cone, but players with the Burden of Sin would lose a stack and would summon an Echo. Players without Burden would receive 300% increased damage from this ability. So the idea here was that you would have us split into portions and make sure that he would hit a certain portion of the raid with the cone, because if he hit too many of us, too many of these Echoes of Sins would come out, and they would just be... It would be very, very painful. There was a lot of damage that this could put out. So we had to manage like how many people would have their stacks. And it was important because one of the things you had to make sure, because also this was also the time you had to get him down to 70%, because otherwise the entire room would be covered and you'd have to start over again. It'd be a wipe. But once you got him to about 70% health, yeah, 70% health, he would then go to the middle and draw players to the center and then cast them outward to the edge of the room and would tell them, you have to crawl to me on your knees. And if you were affected by a Burden of Sin, your movement speed would be slowed per stack. And you were unable to use abilities. So once you got to the center, you would be absolved of your burdens. But this is why you had to make sure that you had all your stacks gone, or at least as many of them removed as you could by the time you got to that, because if you had all 5 stacks, you basically couldn't move. And if by the time you then get to the part where he pulls you all down to the following area, if you still had a stack or a burden, you would be insta-killed. There was just no way around it. So, yeah. The next part of the fight is where things got a little bit more like manageable, or even a little bit like, okay, like now we can kind of like settle down and such, like, and just kind of work on what else is going on. Like there were ads like the Crimson Chorus that we had to deal with. There was this mechanic he would do where he would do a big cast and it was a big AoE, and we had to use mirrors in the room to get to the other side of the room before it went off. Ramornia would do this thing where she would get extra versions, duplicates of herself, and just kind of like go across the room and try to basically... It was like a big line of damage that you had to go get out of the way of, but there were a number of them, and yeah, it would like just like you know, you had a little bit of room to work with in that regard to avoid getting hit by those things, where if you did get hit by them, it would, yeah, either do lots of damage or put a bleed on it, or yeah, from what I recall. And then once you got him to about, I think it was either 40 or 30% health, he would do the last stage of the fight where he's run out of patience. And this is where the other DPS check portion of the fight. This is a fight that had 2 DPS checks. The first one to get him to 70% while managing the stacks of the burdens. And then the last part of the fight which was trying to kill him before the room was covered up. Yeah, it was a crazy fight. Oh my goodness.
You will answer for your arrogance.
So I only have one stack.
Cleanses the soul.
Burden of sin.
So there's the Echo of Sin. There's the Night Hunter, which would do that.
Pain cleanses the soul.
Night Hunter.
I want to show the Ravage portion, which basically covers a portion of this room.
Pneumonia,
Ravage.
exterminate this vermin.
Oh, I'll splatter them across your walls!
Yep.
Confess your sins, lest they consume.
So standing on that, of course, did lots of damage. Commanding Presence, where his damage is increased by 10%.
It is time you remembered your place, mortals. Crawl to me on your knees. Surrender, and I will grant you a merciful end.
Crimson
Servants,
Caballist.
remove this
Carnage.
refuse from my sight.
Carnage.
So now we had both Denathrius and Ramornia attacking us. Damage taken is copied to Denathrius.
Carnage.
So yeah, we'd have these ads doing Crimson Chorus. And there was a thing called Impale, where she would do that. But you'll notice there are melee ones here, but there's also ones out there on that platform. This is basically where the ranged DPS had to focus those down, because they're doing the big constant, like, data damage. You'll also notice that right there.
Carnage. Impale.
So that ability that he just cast right there,
Carnage.
what that was him basically doing was... So what we would have to do back then...
Rimonia,
Massacre.
massacre these whelps.
Here's the mechanic I was talking about. Look at this.
Crescendo. Wrangle.
So yeah, you also notice that's on the ground. So we would be tanking Denathrius right here.
I will cut you down.
So that when he does... I forget what it's called. Hand of Destruction? Yeah, right here.
Destruction. Carnage. Carnage.
So yeah, we already went through the mirror, but that was the idea. Like, he would cast it there, we would go through the mirror, and then we would use the, you know, to be able to avoid getting hit by it. But yeah, basically the ranged DPS would also be having to focus on taking out these ads, because they'd be doing this damage to us here.
I cut you down.
So this part right here is not really the race portion of this fight.
Perish together.
But yeah, you'll see that's like if we tanked him like by the mirrors, we could use the mirror on the other side, or we could use that mirror to then go to the one on the other side to avoid that mechanic, is what I'm trying to say.
I will cut you down.
Carnage.
So we would be doing this, dealing with these, you know, mechanics, try to avoid them and such.
These meddlers.
So he would keep summoning these ads, so we would have to like be like, oh crap, more ads, go deal with those. Until this happened.
Patient host. I showed restraint, even courtesy. Yet you continue to provoke my wrath. Very well. You shall have it.
Fatal finesse.
So now he wields Ramornia, which means he does more damage, and our attack speed is reduced. So you see this right here? We had to stand here and soak this.
Destruction.
course, he didn't also want to soak it right there. But yeah, those were one of those like mechanics that we had to deal with, which he would also have this knockback right here. This is the portion that really made it hard for us to get, or rather hard for any group to try and get AOTC right here. Now, just like in the top platform, you'll see now he does this thing where he cuts off. It's a pizza slice of a portion of the room. And of course, you didn't want to get knocked over there. You then had that happen, which would have this, and we'd have to soak it. Because if it didn't get soaked and went off, well, it would basically wipe the group.
Shattering pain.
So yeah, that's this last portion of the fight, and...
My reign is everlasting!
To this day, I'm still just bitter that I never got my AOTC against this guy.
This is not the end, Master! Let me preserve you!
The blade has drawn in his essence!
Zobal shall restore you, Master! We will have vengeance!
No! Denathrius will answer for his betrayal.
Treacherous prince! I will skewer you, slice you, slash you, vivisect you, cut ribbons from you!
We've all heard quite enough from you.
If that sword truly holds the Sire's essence, I fear your spells alone cannot keep his power contained.
True, but I know something that can. We will bring the blade to Sinfall. The Naru that the mortals rescued, Zorali, has pledged to aid our cause. For too long, Denathrius has used the light as a weapon against our people in the Ember Ward. Now, it will be used to bind him.
A fitting fate for one so prideful. He will watch helplessly as we restore Revendreth and thwart the jailer's schemes.
Yes, my friend. Together with these mortals, we will claim victory.
All these years later, and I finally killed Denathrius on heroic difficulty. You know what's funny also? He apparently drops a toy, and I've never gotten it. Trying to see. There's supposed to be an item that he drops, or a pet he drops. Something Remornia. Something that involves Remornia, and... hold on. Maybe it's in the pet area. There it is. The Pommel Jewel of Remornia. The Will of Remornia. It drops from him, and I have never gotten this. 26 times I have killed him in every difficulty, because it can drop from any difficulty, and I've never gotten it. So, I still have reason to come back and farm this guy. In fact, there's a number of sets and such that I never got from this, that I have now reason to come back and bring other characters here to farm this place. So, yeah. Number of sets I never finished. Even though I'm not too fond of some of the sets that are here in this raid, but... let's just say I'm glad that I finally got my heroic kill on Denathrius. I just wish I had done it back then to get my AOTC, but... oh well. When we return, we will be heading to a raid that I told myself when I saw everything in the raid, I thought, I'm going to come back and farm this raid quite often. And that's certainly going to be the case when you see what we're going to be dealing with and what we're going to be collecting. But I would say the next raid is the one that I would probably come back to the most to collect stuff, because I really like the stuff from that raid. When we head into the Sanctum of Domination. Stay tuned.